Good morning, boys and girls. We're on to chapter 4 in Shooting the Moon. Where we left off last, the main character, Jamie, she has a volunteer job at the local rec hall in the army base. And she's getting to know this a soldier there who works there. And he's probably about 18 or 19 years old. And her brother already went off to Vietnam, and so let's start from there. All right, chapter 4. TJ's first letter to me wasn't a letter at all. It was a roll of film. The package was waiting on the front hall table when I got home from the rec center on a Friday afternoon. I rushed to tear it open, but my mother stepped in between me and the mail. "Let's wait until your father gets home, honey," she said, picking up the package and holding it out of reach. "TJ's first letter from Vietnam is a special occasion." I paced around the house for the rest of the afternoon, wanting so bad to get my hand on TJ's letter. TJ's package. Well, maybe not a big package. Maybe it was more like a padded envelope, but something was in there. Something was from the war. Every 5 minutes, I call out to my mother, "The colonel won't mind if we open it. He's not sentimental about things like letters." "Oh, you'd be surprised how sentimental your father is. He's an old softy," my mother would call back. The colonel was as soft as a granite wall when it came down to it. But I have to admit, he seemed almost emotional when he saw TJ's package on the table. "Why don't we take a look at this thing?" he said, and I could tell he was as eager as I was to see what was inside. Normally, the colonel hardly even said hello when he walked in the door after work. He liked to go upstairs and change. First thing, the three of us sat down on the living room couch, and the colonel used his penknife to open the padded envelope. He shook a little bit, and a black film canister dropped out. The colonel examined it and handed it to me. There was a note attached. "Jamie, no facilities here," I read. "Please develop and send contact sheets." No signature, no message about where he was or what war was like, just a roll of film. And what did he mean, send contact sheets? You didn't get contact sheets when the PX developed your film. All you got were pictures and negatives. One reason TJ said he learned to develop his own film is that he liked having all of his pictures printed on one sheet of paper to see which ones were worth blowing up to 8 by 10. Why hadn't he written, "Please have developed at PX"? He knew I didn't have the faintest idea about how to develop film. But I'd known TJ long enough to know this about him. When it came to photography, he did not make casual mistakes. If he'd wanted to take it to the PX, he would have written, "Take it to the PX." In fact, if he'd wanted to take it to the PX, he would have just mailed it to my mother. But he hadn't. He sent my mother and the colonel a boring letter about the flight over and the mess hall food. "Everything comes out of a tin can," the colonel read. "Even the meat, even the chocolate cream pie." One guy I know actually wrote his mom asking her to send fresh tomatoes. I'd like to see that box when he opened it. The colonel and my mother laughed like that was some great joke. Personally, I couldn't care less that he'd made friends with a guy all the way from Alaska, or that he'd seen a cockroach bigger than his fist on the first night in country. Information also included in the letter. What did that have to do with anything important? He sent me the roll of film with instructions to develop it. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like that was fine by me. No one else was going to see TJ's war pictures before I saw them. Maybe I hadn't gotten a bona fide letter, but the pictures were my property. "You know who can help me with this?" I asked Private Hollister the next day, showing him the film. "I mean, how do you even get the film out?" "I told you, nobody around here really knows." Private Hollister was wrapping tape around a ping pong paddle handle as he spoke, cussing under his breath when he wrapped his fingers too. Overall, the job appeared to be slow going. I mean, there are a few guys who come in and use the dark room, but it's hard to say when they'll show up. This one guy, Brzezinski, all he takes pictures of is our tanks. And there's Sergeant Bird. He comes in a lot in the afternoon. He's a strange dude, though. What's so strange about him? I heard he was at Khe Sanh with the 1st Cavalry, and that it did something to him. I see him around, and once in a while he's friendly, but mostly he's just up in his own head. He goes off post with a camera by himself whenever he's off duty. You almost always see him with a camera. What's Khe Sanh? I asked, hopping up to take a seat on a pool table. A practice strictly forbidden when anyone was in the main room, but one that Private Hollister let me get away with if no one else was around. It's a Marine base. Only Army units are there too. It's a real bad spot, way out in the boonies. They say you're lucky if you don't get shot just getting on or off the plane at the landing strip. That's happened to plenty of guys. Guys who were done with their tours and heading out to go back to the States. You think he'd teach me how to develop film? Private Hollister peeled a strip of tape from his hand. I guess so. He's strange, though, but he seems nice enough. Usually you see him around 3 o'clock. I was waiting in the dark room at 2:45, clutching TJ's film cartridge in my hand. Butterflies whirred in my stomach as I imagined accidentally exposing the film to the light or dropping it into a sink of developing solution and not being able to get it out. I was dying to know what the war was like. TJ's letter to my parents hadn't said much at all, just that he was adjusting, that he liked the guys in his unit, that he hadn't had to work in a combat situation yet. There was nothing in that that let you taste the true flavor of war, smell the smoke of bombs, hear the helicopters as they took off from the middle of the jungle. Think you're asking a lot of TJ, sport, the colonel said to me when I complained about his lackluster letter. He's been over there 2 weeks. He hasn't had time to wipe his rear end yet, much less write us a poem about the joys of Southeast Asia. You think he likes it over there? I asked. We were eating dinner, my mother's famous squash casserole, the colonel's favorite, and I could tell I was wearing him thin with my comments and questions. The colonel liked to be able to savor his food, especially when it came to cheesy casseroles covered with buttered breadcrumbs toasted to a golden brown. I think he probably hates it, the colonel replied, his fork halfway into his mouth, strings of cheese stretching from his plate. I think he's probably thinking about the squash casserole right about now and remembering how soft his pillow upstairs is. I think you're wrong, I said, and felt even more determined to learn how to develop TJ's film. Then the true story would come out with TJ at the center of it, the hero of it all. Hollister said you were looking for me. The GI who entered the room most closely resembled a whooping crane, or at least what I imagine a whooping crane to look like, tall and thin to the point of distraction. Pointy nose, sort of person who didn't quite seem comfortable in his skin, but might surprise you by being an amazing dancer. Are you Sergeant Bird? Uh-huh. In the flesh, the one and only. That's Bird with a Y. By the way, I can't fly, but I won't crap on your windshield either. Well, what are you supposed to say to that? I pointed to the name tag strip sewn over the pocket of his flak jacket. It read Bird T. What's the T stand for? Theophilus, middle name of James. You can call me Ted though, if you want to be informal about it. I'll call you ma'am, unless you have another moniker you'd prefer to be referred to now. Jamie's fine, I told him. You think you could teach me how to develop this roll of film? I held it up. My brother sent it to me from Vietnam. Sergeant Bird eyed the film with interest. Where's he at? He's with the 51st Medical Company in Phu Bai, I told him. He's a medic. Oh, hard job. No gun, no glory. A lot of bullet dodging. Medics are the true war heroes, you see, if you want my opinion. That's when I decided I liked Sergeant Byrd. He set down his camera bag he was carrying and motioned me to toss him the film cartridge. Good film, medium speed, which is right for this kind of photography, I bet he's doing, he said, examining it. And black and white, which makes our job a lot easier. Color processing is a headache. It's better just to send color film to a lab. He picked up a large white plastic spool from the counter. You ever see one of these things? It's called a film reel. The hardest part of the job. You got to get the film from the cartridge onto this baby, and you got to do it blind. He pointed to a door on the other side of the room. You sit in that little closet over there and make it all happen. In the dark? What if I ruin the film before it's even developed? Sergeant Byrd reached into his bag and pulled out another film cartridge, which he handed to me. You can practice on this one. I'll shout directions to you through the door. I don't want to ruin your film, I protested. Ain't nothing but a ain't nothing but a thing, my young friend, said Sergeant Byrd. I'm all about the process. The end product is less important to me. You ruin some film, big deal. I'll take more pictures. I took the film reel, a canister, and a canister cover into the closet and closed the door. I was in complete darkness. Okay, what do I do first? I asked, fumbling around, trying to feel what was the reel. What was the canister, holding on to the film cartridge for dear life? He walked me through the process. I unwound the film from its spool and slid one end of it into a slot on the other edge of the reel. The tricky part was loading the film into the reel, which meant catching the edges of the film on the reel's teeth. This took me about 20 tries and a lot of hot blooded cussing to accomplish. Once I finally got the film loaded, all I had to do was insert the reel in the canister and cover it. That part was a cinch. I think I'm ready to open the door now, I told Sergeant Byrd. Is the canister lid on tightly? I think so. Then emerge and let's see how you did. Sergeant Byrd was full of high praise for my work. I've never seen anyone figure out how to load a film reel that fast, he told me. You're a natural, kid. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks. I'd never been called a natural at anything before. I was good at several things: throwing a football, unknotting knots, multiplying fractions. I could draw hands that almost looked real, except the thumbs were never 100% right. But no one had ever noticed a pure natural born talent in me before now. You ready to try your brother's film? I nodded. Combat ready. Shadows seemed to pass over Sergeant Byrd's face. Let's call this a combat-free zone. How about how about it? Combat-free, duty-free, fancy-free. Land of the free, home of the brave. He smiled and handed me TJ's film. Time to get to work. What do you say, pal? Okay, I told him. I think I can do it. He patted me on the shoulder. Oh, you can do it all right. Like I said, you're a natural. He was right. I was a natural. All right, that is chapter 5. Can't wait to find out what these pictures look like. All right. Till next time. Have a good day.